On her wedding day, the woman suddenly felt unwell. This was followed by heavy bleeding from her lower body. Seeing this, the groom frantically rushed his wife to the hospital. This miscarriage left the woman permanently unable to bear children. Though her husband never resented her infertility, his mother could not tolerate her daughter-in-law. Growing increasingly furious, she banged on the couple's door and demanded they divorce immediately. She refused to accept her daughter-in-law's infertility, that the couple had only recently married. Naturally, the man refused his mother's demand. He even declared he could live without children. He immediately pulled his wife into their room. Seeing his son's actions, the mother was utterly enraged. Her words plunged the woman into deep anguish. How she longed to bear her husband's child. Yet she had already suffered 2 miscarriages. This woman, now without a womb, was named Yan He. 3 years prior, she had secretly dated a poor boyfriend named Don Han and even conceived his child. Upon learning of this, her father sent men to separate them. He utterly despised the idea of Don Han, a man of humble means, becoming his son-in-law, and forcibly took his pregnant daughter back home. Don Han couldn't accept losing his girlfriend and child. He could only chase after them desperately on his motorcycle, but during the chase, a large truck suddenly appeared. Unable to avoid it, Don Han suffered a horrific accident. By the time he reached the hospital, he showed no signs of life. Yan He, overcome with grief, lost the baby she was carrying. It wasn't until 3 years later that she met her current husband, He Wu. But on her wedding day, Yan He lost her second child. This miscarriage left Yan He permanently unable to bear children. Hearing this, He Wu's in-laws began coveting his family's fortune. They believed He Wu, now childless, would have no heir to inherit the family estate. They desperately tried to push their own child onto He Wu as an adopted son. Hearing this, mother-in-law He Jae flew into a rage. From then on, she relentlessly pressured her son and daughter-in-law to divorce, attempting to force He Wu to marry another woman to continue the family line. But He Wu firmly refused, even planning to move out with Yan He. This led to a huge fight between mother and son. He Wu's aunt Jinsu grew deeply concerned upon witnessing this. She devised a solution, hiring a surrogate mother to bear a child. Ki Jae instantly saw hope in this proposal. Jinsu also shared her idea with He Wu and Yan He. However, He Wu refused to accept this suggestion. Since her son refused to cooperate, Ki Jae resorted to feigning illness to pressure them into compromise. Yan He felt helpless seeing her mother-in-law's desperation, and ultimately agreed to the arrangement. Ki Jae was overjoyed at this turn of events, but He Wu remained firmly opposed to his mother's plan. Another heated argument erupted between mother and son. Yan He insisted she agreed with her mother-in-law's proposal. She also yearned to have a child with her husband. Finally, moved by Yan He's pleas, He Wu relented. Ki Jae felt immense gratitude toward her daughter-in-law. She vowed that once the child was born, she would treat Yan He as a benefactor. From then on, Ki Jae began searching for a suitable surrogate mother. Just as she finished contacting a doctor and hung up the phone, a girl suddenly appeared in front of her car. After Ki Jae slammed on the brakes, the girl had already collapsed unconscious. Fortunately, the girl ultimately suffered no serious injuries. Jinsu, who rushed to the scene, was surprised to discover the girl was Chae-young, an employee at his store. After regaining consciousness, Chae-young refused further examination and left the hospital immediately. Compared to the physical pain, the emotional agony left her feeling utterly hopeless. Ever since her brother died in a car accident 3 years ago, her mother, Chu-ji, had undergone a complete personality change. Not only did she spend her days drinking and partying, she even borrowed money from loan sharks to gamble. Ultimately, Chu-ji's actions left the family deeply in debt. Debt collectors frequently camped outside their home, and Chae-young and her younger sister often suffered the consequences. Her lazy uncle, Chan-sik, offered no help whatsoever. No matter how many jobs Chae-young took on, it was never enough to pay off the debts. Once, Chae-young even took a job as a hostess in a bar to earn extra income. Unable to endure the sexual harassment and refusing to comply with a customer, she ended up beaten and publicly humiliated on the spot. At that moment, Chae-young felt her life held no hope. After learning about Chae-young's situation from Jinsu, Ki Jae believed Chae-young would be a suitable surrogate mother for their family. Soon after, Chae-young's mother and uncle suddenly contacted Ki Jae, demanding compensation for her daughter's injury, and immediately asked for 2 million won. Surprisingly, Ki Jae agreed on the spot. Chan-sik excitedly handed over his bank card. Unbeknownst to Chu-ji, her actions directly endangered her own daughter. Ki Jae soon arranged a meeting with Chae-young and promised a substantial sum as compensation. Though deeply tempted by the offer, Chae-young refused Ki Jae's request. She couldn't accept earning money this way. That night, Chae-young had a nightmare where she found herself giving birth to another woman's child in the delivery room. This terrified Chae-young away, just as she resolved to repay her debts through honest labor. The appearance of a couple completely altered her perspective. While at work, Chae-young unexpectedly encountered her deceased brother Don-han's ex-girlfriend. Standing beside her was none other than her own ex-boyfriend from 8 years prior, the man who had toyed with her emotions. Back then, Haewoo had ended their relationship immediately after sleeping with her. She never imagined these two would become husband and wife. Chae-young felt they didn't deserve their current happiness. One was the woman who caused her brother's death. The other was the man who took her virginity and abandoned her. Later, Chae-young bumped into Yan-hee in the restroom. Though they'd met briefly before, Yan-hee had no recollection of Chae-young. This only fueled Chae-young's anger further. While cleaning the boss's office, Chae-young overheard that Hee-jae was Haewoo's mother, and the boss was Haewoo's aunt. They planned to seek a surrogate mother at a Korean hospital. The mention of a Korean hospital instantly reminded Chae-young of her acquaintance, Kon-ho. Kon-ho worked as a doctor at that very hospital. In that moment, Chae-young conceived a plan for revenge. She intended to use Kon-ho's connections to swap Yan-hee's eggs with her own. Once the child grew up, she would deliver the final blow to Yan-hee. That very night, Chae-young contacted Hee-jae, agreeing to be the surrogate. Hee-jae was overjoyed upon hearing this. She couldn't wait to meet Chae-young, and inquired about her terms. Chae-young stated she needed 2 billion won. Hee-jae readily agreed. She then shared the news with her son and daughter-in-law, urging them to prepare. After that, Yan-hee arrived at the hospital to undergo various tests. Once Yan-hee had everything prepared, Chae-young sought out Kon-ho, who was working at the hospital. She wanted him to help swap Yan-hee's eggs with her own. Only by doing this could she avenge her brother. Though Kon-ho was a close friend of both Chae-young and her brother, and had always been indebted to Don-han. As a qualified doctor, he couldn't commit an unethical act. He flatly refused Chae-young's request. Seeing this, Chae-young pleaded with Kon-ho to help her. She wanted to make her brother's ex-girlfriend suffer the punishment she deserved. After much deliberation, Kon-ho surprisingly relented. Chae-young then signed a contract with Hee-jae, and received an advance payment. Hee-jae took Chae-young to the hospital for the embryo transfer procedure. Simultaneously, Kon-ho swapped the two women's eggs. The entire process went smoothly. Chae-young, now successfully pregnant, was escorted out by Hee-jae. Hee-jae, fearing complications for her grandchild, rented a luxury apartment for her. Chae-young only needed to focus on her pregnancy. All her prenatal checkups proceeded smoothly. Meanwhile, Yan-hee, at her mother-in-law's insistence, wore a fake belly daily to pretend she was pregnant. Haewoo, feeling sorry for his wife, helped her remove the fake belly. Hee-jae was displeased upon seeing her daughter-in-law without the fake belly. If unexpected guests arrived and witnessed this, the deception would be exposed. Haewoo wanted his wife to rest for a day. Hee-jae declared that if she couldn't endure this hardship, she had no right to be a mother. Chae-young's due date approached quickly. Hee-jae urgently contacted Yan-hee to come to the hospital and prepare for delivery. She must enter the delivery room at the same time as Chae-young. Upon receiving the news, the couple rushed to the hospital immediately. Finally, after great effort, Chae-young gave birth to a son. She couldn't wait to see her child, but the doctor stopped her. After all, her wound hadn't been sutured yet. In another ward, Yan-hee finally held her baby. The family was overjoyed to see the newborn, but unexpectedly, Chae-young changed her mind after giving birth. As she tried to find her child, she collided head-on with Haewoo walking toward her. Haewoo had no idea the woman before him was his surrogate. In the end, nurses forcibly dragged Chae-young back into her ward and confined her. Hospital regulations prohibited surrogate mothers from seeing their babies. Kon-ho urged Chae-young to come to her senses. At that moment, Chae-young only wanted her son back. Meanwhile, Hee-jae was overjoyed holding her grandson. Chae-young, however, was plunged into endless agony. Hee-jae had actually blocked her number. When Chae-young finally managed to contact her, it was only to receive money. Hee-jae demanded Chae-young vanish completely from their world. After handing over the remaining payment, Hee-jae left immediately. This left Chae-young utterly devastated. Unwilling to accept this, she secretly went to Hee-jae's home hoping to see the child. Hearing footsteps, Chae-young quickly hid. It turned out to be Yan-hee's maternal family visiting the newborn. The couple seemed even more deeply in love since their son's arrival. Seeing this, Chae-young felt furious. This only strengthened her resolve for revenge. Thus, Chae-young departed overseas, carrying this hatred. Using the 200 million won Hee-jae had given her, she pursued advanced studies in the United States for 6 years. During those 6 years, she completely reinvented herself, transforming into a formidable businesswoman. On the very first day of her return to Korea, a company representative was already waiting to pick her up at the airport. Throughout those 6 years, Chae-young never forgot her son. She then returned to the police station. In Chae-young's mind, Yan-hee and her father were the murderers who killed her brother. She believed believed the police must have overlooked crucial evidence. The officers explained it was indeed a traffic accident back then, caused by her brother chasing after a car. But Chae-young's eyes were already blinded by hatred. No matter how the officers explained it, she remained convinced that Yan-hee and her father were the killers. She even secretly vowed to make them pay for their crimes. That very night, Chae-young deliberately visited the bar to strike up a conversation with Yan-hee's father, Dae-cho, but Dae-cho showed no interest in her. After exchanging a few casual words, he hurriedly left. Seeing this, Chae-young could only shift her focus to Yan-hee's husband. As the head of Daeun Group, he was also the very entity Haewoo was investing in, so Chae-young deliberately invited Haewoo to the pool to discuss business. She intentionally flaunted her sexy figure in front of him. Later, Chae-young proactively invited Haewoo to dinner. Throughout the meal, she deliberately teased him. In the end, their meeting and time together were very pleasant. After the meal, Haewoo hurriedly left. Suddenly, he felt he had met her before, but couldn't quite place her. After approaching Haewoo, Chae-young began investigating Yan-hee's whereabouts. It turned out that over the past 6 years, Yan-hee had become a coffee shop owner. Not wanting to be a housewife at home, she opened this shop to pass the time. That day, Chae-young came to the shop to buy coffee, hoping to get closer to Yan-hee. While busy, Yan-hee accidentally knocked over her son's drawing. Chae-young kindly picked it up and handed it to Yan-hee. Yan-hee happily explained it was a gift from her son. Chae-young praised her child's artistic talent. This marked their first meeting. Chae-young then planned their next encounter. She deliberately left an item behind at the cafe. Later, she called Yan-hee to say she'd come pick it up tomorrow. Because of this small incident, the two became friends. Yan-hee was busy running the coffee shop alone every day and couldn't take care of her son. This infuriated her mother-in-law. She demanded Yan-hee quit her job to take care of the family. Actually, Yan-hee went out to work to avoid conflicts with her mother-in-law. Haewoo didn't support his wife working. Since the child's birth, the couple hadn't had alone time in ages. Whenever Haewoo tried to get intimate with his wife, the child would find excuses demanding to sleep with mom. Over time, Haewoo began harboring other thoughts. He often recalled Chae-young, who had shared meals with him. Suddenly, Haewoo remembered Chae-young was an ex-girlfriend he dated over a decade ago. Back then, he'd found her innocent, cute, and easy to deceive. So after toying with her feelings, Haewoo had callously dumped her. Immediately, Haewoo tracked down Chae-young's apartment to apologize. However, Chae-young ignored him completely. She even kicked him out of her room. At the next day's dinner gathering, Chae-young deliberately acted very close to the male manager. She even took the initiative to dance with him. This deeply provoked Haewoo, so, leveraging his position as the boss, he proactively invited Chae-young to dance with him. This was precisely the outcome Chae-young had wanted. After the dinner gathering ended, Haewoo took Chae-young to a hotel. Just as Haewoo was about to leave, Chae-young suddenly invited him to her room for a drink. Thus, Yan-hee couldn't reach her husband that night. Haewoo's absence unsettled Yan-hee. The family photo smashed on the floor signaled her marriage was shattering. Having achieved her goal, Chae-young gloated. Yan-hee was furious over her husband's absence, yet her mother-in-law defended Haewoo, insisting his work inevitably involved social engagements, and that as a wife, she should show more understanding. Realizing her mother-in-law was shielding her son, Yan-hee held her tongue. Fearing his family's suspicions, Haewoo rushed home early the next morning, and even took ashore to cover his tracks, hoping to avoid his wife discovering his nighttime activities. But traces remained on his shirt. Yan-hee noticed but didn't call him out. Instead, she asked if he'd been out for business the night before. Haewoo explained he'd been with his secretary. Yan-hee stated she'd already called the secretary. Haewoo felt uneasy upon hearing this. He then accused his wife of not trusting him. His inexplicable outburst left Yan-hee speechless. Seeing this, Haewoo quickly apologized to his wife. Only when Yan-hee showed no sign of blame did he relax. However, as soon as Yan-hee left the room, Chae-young contacted Haewoo and accused him of sneaking away. She demanded he inform her next time he left. Haewoo passionately promised it would happen next time. Chae-young knew she had him completely under her thumb. She then began seeking opportunities to approach Yan-hee. She deliberately left an item behind at the shop and presented it to Yan-hee. She claimed the items were originally intended as a gift for her friend's son, but unexpectedly, her friend had suddenly emigrated, so she wanted to give these items to Yan-hee's son as a present. Since the clothes happened to fit her son's size, Yan-hee accepted them. She warmly invited Chae-young to visit often for coffee, and even shared photos of her son with Chae-young. Thus, they exchanged contact information and became friends. That very evening, Yan-hee had her son Jingwoo try on the clothes Chae-young had given her, and sent Chae-young photos of him in the new outfit. In the days that followed, Chae-young frequently visited Yan-hee's shop to bring flowers, even suggesting they address each other as sisters. Eager to see more photos of the boy, Chae-young visited the mall the next day to buy Jinwoo a tow car. There, she coincidentally encountered Yan He's father, who was also shopping for his grandson. Recognizing him from their brief prior encounter, Chai Young promptly approached Bei Cho to greet him, even deliberately offering to brush dust off his shoulders. Chai Young did this because she had someone secretly filming nearby. Soon after, the two arranged to have a meal together. Chai Young once again used her tactics to draw closer to Bei Cho. She asked if she could call the chairman when she was feeling down. Having lost her father at a young age, she envied those who had fathers. Hearing this, Bei Cho felt pity for Chai Young. This gathering also allowed the two to enjoy each other's company. That day, Chai Young happened to spot Bei Cho shopping with his wife at the mall. She deliberately called Bei Cho again. Feeling uneasy about Chai Young's call, Bei Cho hesitated. His wife Jiam urged him to answer immediately. With no choice, Bei Cho picked up the phone in front of his wife. To his surprise, Chai Young confessed her feelings to him. That day, Chai Young deliberately bought two identical sexy nightgowns. She kept one for herself and gave the other as a gift to Yan He. Having noticed her husband frequently staying out late lately, Yan He planned to surprise him that evening. But when she appeared before him in the sexy nightgown, Haewoo became visibly flustered. It was because Chai Young had worn the same nightgown the night before. Guilty, he immediately demanded she take it off. Yan He couldn't understand why her husband reacted so negatively. The next day, Chai Young desperately wanted to know what had happened between Yan He and her husband the night before. Yan He didn't want to share such private matters with outsiders, so she could only lie and say everything went smoothly. Knowing Yan He was lying, Chai Young pressed for more details. Seeing this, Yan He made an excuse to leave first. Yet the moment Yan He left, Chai Young invited Haewoo out shopping and even asked him to stay overnight at her place. Haewoo flatly refused, because his family had an important dinner tonight. Then Chai Young demanded Haewoo buy her a gift to cheer her up. After that, she even insisted on picking out a gift for Yan He. Haewoo initially wanted to refuse, but since it was his wife's birthday tonight, a gift was inevitable. So he asked Chai Young to help select a ring. That evening, Haewoo presented the gift to Yan He. Seeing her husband give her such a beautiful ring for the first time, Yan He was utterly delighted. Just as everyone was happily enjoying dinner, Chai Young deliberately called Haewoo, feigning severe discomfort, demanding he come home to keep her company. As Chai Young moaned incessantly, Haewoo, worried, prepared to rush over. He deliberately told his family he had urgent business at the company. Though Yan He felt disappointed, she agreed. After successfully luring Haewoo over, Chai Young began her preparations. She deliberately changed into sexy nightwear and sprayed hydrating mist on her face. Once everything was ready, she immediately opened the door for Haewoo. Then she pretended to faint into his arms, keeping him there. Yan He spent another night alone. It wasn't until the next day that Haewoo called his wife, lying that his friend's father had suddenly passed away. He hoped Yan He wouldn't be angry with him. What Haewoo hadn't anticipated was that the ring he'd given Chai Young was taken to the counter and exchanged for an identical one belonging to Yan He. The very next day, Chai Young deliberately asked Yan He what her birthday gift had been the night before. Unaware of the truth, Yan He proudly showed off the ring her husband had given her. But then she discovered Chai Young wore an identical ring. Chai Young lied, claiming it was a gift from her boyfriend. Just then, Haewoo arrived at the coffee shop. But upon seeing Chai Young, Haewoo panicked. He could only greet her as if they were strangers. That night, lying in bed, Haewoo couldn't sleep as his thoughts swirled. He warned his wife not to have excessive contact with Chai Young. Yet Yan He paid no heed to her husband's words. She regarded Chai Young as her best friend. They even got matching manicures. When Yan He bought toes for her son, Chai Young would insist on paying. After all, Chai Young saw these gifts as presents for her own son. Meanwhile, she and Haewoo were secretly dating. They spent every day together, living a sweet life, even in public. They were inseparable. Soon, rumors of Haewoo's affair spread like wildfire throughout the company. Soon Ben, who had long harbored feelings for Yan He, also heard the rumors. He approached Yan He, urging her to keep a close eye on her husband, and to be especially wary of the head of Daeun Group. Yan He, absorbed in her work, remained unaware of the gossip. Soon-bin's warning left her puzzled. Back at the shop, Yan He found herself repeatedly pondering Soon-bin's words. She then asked a waitress if she knew who the head of Daeun Group was. The staff explained it was Chai Young, a frequent coffee shop patron. Yan He couldn't believe it. Only then did she realize Chai Young's boyfriend was actually her own husband. Their previous act of pretending not to know each other in front of her had all been a facade. That day, Ki-jae arrived at her son's office and witnessed an unbelievable scene. Because Chai Young was their family's surrogate mother, she couldn't understand why these two were together. Yet Chai Young showed no sign of panic. She even shot Ki-jae a contemptuous glance before leaving the scene. Seeing this, Ki-jae berated her son for his actions. She demanded Haewoo immediately break up with that woman. She then tracked down Chai Young and confronted her, demanding if she was deliberately pursuing Haewoo. Chai Young explained that being with Haewoo was purely coincidental. They had acted on their mutual love, unable to resist their feelings. feelings. Ki-jae accused Chae-young of destroying someone else's marriage. She demanded Chae-young leave Hae-woo immediately. Seeing this, Chae-young deliberately stated that unless Hae-woo gave her 100 billion won in breakup compensation, she would never leave of her own accord. This left Hee-jae momentarily a loss. Yan-hee, having discovered rumors of her husband's ambiguous relationship with Chae-young, confronted Hae-woo, demanding why he had deceived her. Hae-woo, however, accused his wife of being overly suspicious. After berating her, he hurriedly rushed out. This provided him with an excuse to spend the night at Chae-young's home. Chae-young had already been waiting for him in the bathroom for quite some time. The next day, she sought out Yan-hee to deliberately apologize, but Yan-hee felt utterly disappointed in Chae-young. She couldn't understand why Chae-young would deceive her like this. Chae-young hastily explained that she and Hae-woo were merely business partners. They interacted because of their shared professional interests. All those rumors were false. Yan-hee didn't believe Chae-young's explanation. Yet, to earn Yan-hee's forgiveness, Chae-young had a bouquet of flowers delivered to the shop daily as an apology, hoping this gesture would mend their rift. Hae-woo also called his wife daily to admit his mistakes. With no other choice, Yan-hee reluctantly forgave her husband. Having secured his wife's forgiveness, Hae-woo rushed home that night, clinging tightly to her. Yet Yan-hee hadn't truly forgiven her husband. When Hae-woo attempted intimacy, Yan-hee reacted with visible aversion. Hae-woo grew deeply dissatisfied. He believed that having apologized to his wife, he deserved forgiveness as a matter of course. Yan-hee was heartbroken by her husband's attitude. She could only go to her son's room to cry in secret. Ki-jae knew her son and daughter-in-law's marriage was in trouble. She hoped her daughter-in-law wouldn't focus all her energy on the child, but would pay more attention to her husband. To prevent Hae-woo from seeing Chae-young, Ki-jae began visiting the company every few days. Knowing his mother was watching him closely, Hae-woo deliberately chose an outside location for their dates, deliberately arranging dates with Chae-young while his mother was at the company. Unexpectedly, their intimate behavior outside was witnessed by Aunt Jin-soo. Jin-soo immediately informed her sister-in-law. Ki-jae was furious upon learning this. What she never imagined was that Chae-young and Yan-hee actually knew each other. The thought of her son being utterly captivated by Chae-young filled her with rage. To prevent Hae-woo from getting deeper into trouble, Ki-jae resolved to tell her son the whole truth. But before she could speak, Yan-hee happened to come downstairs. With no choice, Ki-jae closed her mouth again. She didn't want Yan-hee to know the truth. Hae-woo sensed his mother was holding something back, so he went to her room to ask what she really wanted to say. Finally, pressed by Hae-woo's questioning, Ki-jae finally revealed the truth. Chae-young's motive was to get close to the children. Hae-woo couldn't believe what he heard. Sure enough, soon after, Chae-young began appearing frequently at the kindergarten, observing the children's every move. To get a closer look at her own son, Chae-young deliberately staged a chance encounter and called out to Yan-hee. She then eagerly pulled her son close, asking his name, even hugging the child tightly. Yan-hee witnessed the scene, but didn't think much of it. To spend more time with her son, Chae-young offered to take them out to dinner. Since Chae-young was her daughter's friend, Ji-mo agreed. However, when the four arrived at the restaurant, Jin-soo was utterly shocked. She knew Chae-young was Hae-woo's surrogate mother. With Yan-hee present, she dared not reveal her feelings. Just then, Chae-young suggested taking Jin-woo to a toy store to pick out a gift. Seeing this, Jin-soo had no choice but to share the news with her sister-in-law. Ki-jae instructed her to keep an eye on Chae-young. Simultaneously, she relayed the information to her son. Hae-woo assured her he would handle the situation. Chae-young finally found an opportunity to be alone with her son. She bought every toy Jin-woo expressed interest in. She believed this was the only way to make up for the years she'd neglected him. Afterward, the two took a photo together. Only after buying a pile of toys did Chae-young reluctantly lead her son away. She desperately wanted to tell Jin-woo she was his mother, but after an internal struggle, she held back, fearing Chae-young might take Jin-woo away, and followed them the entire way. She warned Chae-young not to lay a finger on the child. Chae-young, however, asserted her right to visit her own child. Chae-young's actions made Hae-woo's family fear she might take Jin-woo away at any moment. Under his mother's warning, Hae-woo grew wary of Chae-young. Chae-young explained becoming a surrogate was pure coincidence, and that her desire to stay by Hae-woo's side stemmed from genuine love. Seeing Chae-young's heartfelt confession, Hae-woo once again believed her lies. That day, Yan-hee suddenly received a mysterious package containing photos of her husband shopping with another woman, but the identity of the other woman remained unclear. Distraught over the photos, Yan-hee was in turmoil. Just then, Seung-bin, who had long harbored feelings for her, called. Naturally, Yan-hee turned to him as a confidant. After all, she and Seung-bin had known each other for over a decade. They had long since become very close friends. That day, Cha Young was on a date with Haewoo, yet during their time together, she deliberately arranged to meet Yan-hee. She lied, claiming she was feeling down and wanted Yan-hee to join her for drinks at a hotel. Without hesitation, Yan-hee headed to the address Cha Young provided, but the moment she pushed open the hotel room door, she completely broke down. Haewoo was utterly shocked to see his wife there. Watching the couple reach this point was exactly what Cha Young had hoped for. Yan-hee was overcome with grief. After regaining her composure, she finally realized what kind of person Cha Young truly was. Yan-hee stood by the riverbank in a daze for a long time before returning home. TJ, noticing this, was deeply puzzled. She called Yan-hee out of her room to ask what was wrong. Faced with her mother-in-law's concern, Yan-hee could no longer hold back the grievances in her heart. But before she could speak, Haewoo happened to return. TJ, seeing this, already guessed the reason, so she berated her son harshly in front of Yan-hee. Yet Haewoo showed no remorse. Instead, he accused his wife of tattling. He declared he would choose the right moment to end things with Cha Young completely, to preserve a complete family for her son. Yan-hee chose to endure. The next morning, the entire family acted as if nothing had happened. To warn Cha Young to stop pursuing her husband, Yan-hee summoned her courage and confronted Cha Young face to face, demanding answers. She couldn't fathom Cha Young's motives for approaching her. Was it merely the twisted satisfaction of stealing another woman's husband? To Yan-hee's shock, Cha Young reveled in her anger. Her entire purpose was to shatter Yan-hee's happiness. Cha Young seized the moment to reveal she was Haewoo's ex-girlfriend. They had dated over a decade ago, and she couldn't simply let go of that connection. Yan-hee was at a loss for what to do. Haewoo, seeking his wife's forgiveness, apologized to her, and promised to immediately end things with Cha Young and return to his family. Yan-hee also hoped her husband would resolve this situation quickly. That very night, Haewoo arranged to meet Cha Young and broke things off. Upon hearing this, Cha Young began playing the victim. She claimed that even though she was only a surrogate mother, she had developed feelings for Jinwoo. She hoped Haewoo would bring their son to meet her. If she could just see the child once, she would disappear completely from then on. Haewoo listened and ultimately agreed to her request. The next day, Haewoo brought their son to the amusement park. Seeing her son, Cha Young became deeply emotional. The three spent a joyful day together at the playground. Haewoo asked his son not to tell his mother about today's outing. Cha Young outwardly supported Haewoo's request. However, when Haewoo stepped away to take a call, she deliberately slipped a photograph into her son's bag. Unexpectedly, Jinwoo accidentally let slip about the outing when he returned home. Yan-hee sensed something was amiss. While rummaging through her son's bag, she discovered the group photo. Yan-hee was furious upon seeing it, yet she managed to hold back her anger. To her surprise, Cha Young approached her the very next day. She proudly displayed the drawing Jinwoo had given her. Seeing Cha Young act so brazenly in front of her, Yan-hee immediately stormed to confront Haewoo. She demanded to know why he continued associating with Cha Young. Haewoo lied, claiming he had completely broken off ties with Cha Young and would have no further contact beyond work matters. Though Yan-hee knew her husband was lying, she chose to endure it for the sake of their family. Later, Sungbin learned of all Yan-hee had endured. Out of concern, he frequently called to comfort her, fearing her husband might misunderstand. Yan-hee deliberately kept her distance and ignored his calls. Yet one day, Haewoo spotted the text messages on her phone and demanded to know the nature of her relationship with Sungbin. When Yan-hee dared to argue back, Haewoo flew into a rage and struck her. Yet he immediately regretted it. Their son, startled by the commotion, pushed open the door. Yan-hee hurried to comfort him, unwilling to see him hurt. The next morning, Yan-hee pretended nothing had happened and ate breakfast with her family. Jinwoo told his grandmother that dad had hit mom last night. Upon learning this, TJ angrily confronted her son. She ordered them never to argue in front of the child again, to avoid negatively impacting Jinwoo. To prevent her son from further entanglement with Cha Young, TJ directly handed a 100 million won check to Cha Young's mother, hoping her daughter would cease disrupting Haewoo's marriage. Cha Young soon received the check her mother gave her, and was instantly consumed by rage. Chuji believed her daughter shouldn't destroy another family, but Cha Young refused to back down. She confronted TJ and mocked her for offering too little money. If she truly wanted a breakup fee, she should have prepared $1 billion. TJ retorted, asking Cha Young what right she had to demand $1 billion. She had already received benefits when she chose to be a surrogate. Why was she now reneging on her agreement? Seeing this, Cha Young tore up the original surrogacy contract right in front of her. From that moment, TJ knew Cha Young was no pushover, so she could only urge Yan-hee to treat Haewoo better from now on. Only then could she salvage this marriage. More importantly, she must focus entirely on the family. Taking her mother-in-law's advice to heart, Yan He resolved to show weakness before her husband. She planned a family outing for the weekend, but Haewoo immediately refused, citing work commitments. Yan He believed he was making excuses. Haewoo felt his wife was overly suspicious. Yan He insisted he never intended to end things with Chae-young from the start. Haewoo, pushed beyond endurance, slapped his wife. This renewed violence plunged Yan He into unbearable agony. The next day, Chae-young arranged to meet Yan He. Her goal was to provoke Yan He into initiating divorce proceedings. To further provoke Yan He, Chae-young even called Haewoo right in front of her. Watching their intimate interaction, Yan He's heart ached unbearably. To hasten their divorce, Chae-young anonymously sent Haewoo a mysterious package. Upon discovering intimate photos of his wife with another man, Haewoo furiously accused her of infidelity and demanded answers about her relationship with the man. Yan He insisted it was all a misunderstanding, but Haewoo refused to believe her. That very night, he demanded they sleep in separate rooms. No matter how Yan He pleaded, he refused to listen. Yan He knew Chae-young was behind the photos. Her motive was clear: to destroy their marriage. Haewoo no longer cared about the truth. He insisted on divorcing Yan He. Overwhelmed by grief, Yan He sought solace at her ex-boyfriend Don Han's grave. Their relationship had never received parental blessing, ultimately leading to their separation and Don Han's death. She felt this was her retribution. Just then, Soongbin arrived to pay respects to his senior. Seeing Yan He weeping bitterly about her marriage, Don Han urged her to divorce quickly and find happiness. Yan He knew she'd lose custody of her son after divorce. For her son's sake, she could never abandon this marriage lightly. Yet as Soongbin drove Yan He home, Yan He, weakened by exhaustion, collapsed to the ground. Soongbin instinctively moved to help her up, but Haewoo witnessed them together once more. Haewoo had already convinced himself his wife was an unfaithful woman. From that day on, conflicts between him and his wife became frequent. Even so, Yan He refused to divorce lightly. To her shock, Chae-young secretly picked up Jinwoo from kindergarten. Upon learning this, Yan He immediately confronted the teacher. The teacher explained they had the father's consent. Yan He feared where they might have taken her son. Only when she rushed to the nearby park did she spot Chae-young. Yan He demanded to know why Chae-young had taken her son. Faced with Yan He's accusations, Chae-young, pushed beyond her limits, slapped her. Yan He tried to retaliate, but her husband, arriving on the scene, stopped her. Yan He angrily confronted her husband, demanding why he treated her this way. Jinwoo, playing nearby, heard his mother's cries and rushed over to comfort her. Haewoo watched the scene with a heavy heart. He took Yan He and their son home. While dragging Chae-young back to the company, Haewoo was deeply disappointed that Chae-young had taken his son without permission. Divorcing Yan He wasn't going to be easy. Besides, his father-in-law was the company's boss. Yet Chae-young's longing for her child grew stronger by the day. Because Haewoo kept delaying the divorce proceedings with Yan He, Chae-young barged into Yan He's home bearing gifts, and bluntly revealed she was the surrogate mother from years ago. Yan He was utterly shocked. TJ, witnessing this, ordered Chae-young to get out immediately. Before leaving, Chae-young shoved something into Yan He's hands. Opening it, Yan He discovered a blood-stained silk scarf. This instantly reminded her of the gift Don Han had given her years ago. Determined to uncover the scarf's origin, she immediately chased after Chae-young with it. Confronting Chae-young about the scarf's history, Chae-young revealed her true identity. She was Don Han's biological sister. Yan He wept bitterly as she apologized to Chae-young. Don Han's death had plunged her into deep self-blame. She begged Chae-young not to harm her family, but Chae-young felt Yan He and her family bore no guilt. If Yan He sincerely begged for forgiveness, she wouldn't hate her so intensely. Before leaving, Chae-young issued a threat. Her revenge against Yan He had only just begun. Chae-young's words made Yan He realize her own mistakes. Though she had once deeply loved Don Han, now she only wanted to protect her son. From this day forward, she would completely forget Don Han. She hoped Don Han would forgive the decision she had made. Meanwhile, to hasten Haewoo's divorce from his wife, Chae-young revealed that Yan He had had a child with her boyfriend during college. Haewoo was utterly shocked upon hearing this. He couldn't believe his wife was the kind of person. To verify Chae-young's claims, Haewoo hired a private investigator the next day to probe Yan He's past. Learning this, Chae-young immediately provided the detective with records of her brother's relationship with Yan He. By the following day, Haewoo received the investigator's findings. The moment intimate photos of his wife with another man surfaced, Haewoo could scarcely believe his eyes. The voice recorder in his hand proved Chae-young's claims were entirely true. He never imagined Yan He could be this kind of person. Haewoo grew increasingly furious and went straight home, slapping his wife across the face. Faced with the recording in her husband's hand, Yan He was utterly baffled. Before their marriage, she had had already confessed her past to Haewoo in a letter. Why was he reacting so violently now? Yet Haewoo insisted he never received such a letter. He stubbornly claimed his wife had deceived his feelings. TJ, standing at the doorway, heard her daughter-in-law's past. Tan was furious. She demanded Yanhee get out and never show her face again. But Yanhee couldn't leave because her son was still at home. She couldn't understand why her husband didn't know her past. Back then, having lost Don Han, she no longer wanted to enter marriage. Yet Haewoo pursued her relentlessly. Finally, Yanhee wrote Haewoo a letter revealing her past, but she didn't know her father had secretly swapped the letter. Back then, Daechao wanted his daughter to marry into a family of equal standing, so he replied with an acceptance letter in his daughter's name. Believing Haewoo accepted her past, Yanhee accepted his proposal, until the moment Yanhee discovered the truth. Furious, she confronted her father, demanding why he had done this. Seeing his daughter's anguish, Daechao was overcome with guilt. He summoned Haewoo to explain in person. Daechao pleaded for Haewoo to forgive Yanhee and build a life together. Haewoo lashed out at his father-in-law, condemning his despicable actions. He even demanded Daechao kneel and apologize. Faced with this, Daechao reluctantly yielded, but Haewoo refused to relent. This time, he was utterly determined to divorce. Watching Yanhee suffer terribly in this marriage, Chae-young believed this was Yanhee's just desserts. After learning Chae-young was Don Han's sister, Yanhee didn't react with anger. Instead, she asked Chae-young what she could do to appease her. Unexpectedly, Chae-young demanded she divorce immediately. Only then would she be satisfied. After exacting her revenge on Yanhee, Chae-young turned her sights on her father's company. She colluded with overseas associates to crash Baekhyun's company stock. That same day, Yanhee received divorce papers from her husband. The next morning, Yanhee dropped her son off at kindergarten. Returning home, she discovered her mother-in-law had changed the door code. As she frantically rang the doorbell, her mother-in-law hurled her luggage outside. She couldn't accept that her daughter-in-law had carried another man's child before marriage. She then locked Yanhee out of the house. Realizing something was terribly wrong, Yanhee rushed to the kindergarten to retrieve her son, but he wasn't there. Jinwoo had already been secretly taken back by her mother-in-law's driver. This plunged Yanhee into utter despair. With no other choice, she returned to her parents' home with her belongings, only to discover the house had been auctioned off by the bank. Upon learning his daughter had been expelled from her in-laws' home, GMO sought justice for her. Yet, after waiting endlessly, he received no response. After sabotaging Yanhee's marriage, Chae-young turned her attention to Yanhee's mother. She deliberately sent GMO a package containing intimate photos of her husband with Chae-young. Devastated, she confronted Chae-young with the photos. Chae-young, however, falsely accused Daechao of initiating the act. She revealed to GMO that all her actions were driven by revenge. She was the sister of Yanhee's ex-boyfriend. Unable to bear the blow, GMO suffered a cerebral hemorrhage and collapsed. When Yanhee rushed to the hospital upon receiving the news, her mother had fallen into a deep coma due to a ruptured cerebral artery. The doctor warned that in severe cases, the patient might become vegetative. The entire family was deeply worried. Just then, an ambulance worker suddenly approached Yanhee and handed her the photos clutched in her mother's hand. Only then did Yanhee learn the reason behind her mother's sudden collapse. Chae-young learned of Yanhee's mother's condition from family members. Consumed by guilt, she visited the hospital ward. Yanhee confronted Chae-young the moment she saw her. She immediately produced the photo, demanding why Chae-young had provoked her mother. Chae-young refused to admit guilt. Yanhee's sense of remorse toward Chae-young vanished. From now on, they would only be enemies. Haewoo, learning of his mother-in-law's critical condition, sent Yanhee money, but Yanhee refused to accept it. Just as Haewoo left the hospital room, Yanhee rushed out after him. She wanted to bring their son to see his grandmother one last time. Haewoo refused, because the house had been mortgaged to the bank. Bank's staff had cleared out their belongings. Left with no choice, Yanhee and her family had to move out and rent a place. During the 2 weeks Yanhee was away from her in-laws' home, Jinwoo cried and threw tantrums every day, clamoring for his mother. Seeing this, Haewoo felt deeply heartbroken, yet he forbade his son from seeing Yanhee again. Learning of the situation, Chae-young seized the opportunity to build a relationship with Jinwoo. The very next day, she packed her belongings and moved into Haewoo's home. She shamelessly declared her intention to become Jinwoo's mother. However, Ki-jae showed no welcome toward Chae-young. After enduring a humiliating scolding, Chae-young had no choice but to endure. To remain in this household, Chae-young exhausted every effort to win the boy's affection. Yet Jinwoo consistently treated Chae-young as an aunt. Chae-young urged Haewoo to finalize his divorce from Yanhee promptly. Haewoo, however, insisted there was no rush. Seeing this, Chae-young felt a sense of crisis. Meanwhile, Yanhee, struggling to make ends meet, began relentlessly searching for work, yet no company was willing to hire her. After all, she'd been a homemaker for over a decade. With no other options, she takes a dishwashing job at a restaurant. One day, Yanhee accidentally drops a bowl on the floor. Fearing the manager will see and fire her, she panics. Just then, A familiar face recognizes her. They turn out to be former university classmates who were once very close. Knowing Yanhee's capabilities, her classmate offers her a position as a new recruit in the education division of her company. After securing this respectable job, Yanhee shared the good news with her father. Daecheo was overjoyed for his daughter. With stable employment, Yanhee yearned to see her son. She pleaded with her aunt to bring the child out. Unable to refuse, Jinsu secretly agreed to Yanhee's request behind his wife's back. He discreetly brought Jinwoo to his family's restaurant. Soon, mother and son were finally reunited. Upon learning this, Chae-young immediately rushed over. But no matter how she tried to stop him, Jinwoo refused to go back with her. Chae-young had no choice but to turn to Haewoo for help. Haewoo, however, insisted that it was perfectly normal for the boy to see his mother. Seeing this, Chae-young could only give up. That night, Yanhee dreamt her mother was bidding her farewell. Waking up, she felt an ominous foreboding. Filled with worry, Yanhee rushed to the hospital to see her mother. When she arrived at the ward, it was already too late. The doctor had just pronounced her mother dead. Yanhee begged the doctor not to give up on resuscitation. When her younger sister Junhee arrived, she too was in disbelief. The next day, Yanhee arranged her mother's funeral. Still reeling from the grief, the family of three sank into despair. Soongbin handled all the funeral arrangements. Driven by guilt, Haewoo brought their son to the funeral. Yanhee's gaze toward Haewoo was filled with resentment. Haewoo had no words to respond. Unable to let his son see his grandmother one last time, Haewoo, consumed by self-blame, decided to let his son stay with his ex-wife for a few more days. Yanhee cherished every moment with her son. She took Jinwoo to the amusement park for the entire day. Then she prepared his favorite foods. Just then, Ki-jae called, demanding Yanhee return the child. Yanhee pleaded with her mother-in-law to let Jinwoo stay 2 more days, but Ki-jae refused outright. The next day, she came personally to take the child back. Yanhee refused to give in easily, so she hurriedly fled with her son. By the time Ki-jae arrived, Yanhee and her son had already left in the car. Jinsu hoped Yanhee and Haewoo would discuss things properly to minimize the harm to Jinwoo. After hearing this, Yanhee finally calmed down and discussed the child's situation with Haewoo. After their discussion, Yanhee finally agreed to let Haewoo raise their son. But ever since Jinwoo was brought home, he disliked Chae-young intensely. Unable to endure it any longer, Chae-young resorted to violence against Jinwoo. Ultimately, under Chae-young's threats, Jinwoo was terrified into developing autism. That day, overcome by longing for his mother, Jinwoo wandered off alone. Unable to locate his mother's address, he roamed aimlessly on the streets. Upon learning his son was missing, Haewoo urgently contacted Yanhee. Yanhee was stunned by the news. Panicked, she rushed out to search for the child. Yet after combing through nearby parks, Jinwoo remained nowhere to be found. Just as Yanhee felt despair, the police called. Arriving at the station, she finally saw her son. Yanhee angrily scolded him for wandering off. Jinwoo tearfully explained he'd run away because he missed his mother. Hearing this, Yanhee was overcome with guilt. Haewoo, having received the police call, rushed over. Ki-jae instructed Haewoo to take their son home, but Jinwoo refused to leave his mother's side. Just as Chae-young tried to snatch Jinwoo away, Yanhee immediately stopped her, declaring she had no right to care for Jinwoo. With that, she swiftly led her son out of the police station. Chae-young could only storm off in anger. This scene, however, was witnessed by Yanhee's colleague. This man was named Lee Ming. He was an exceptionally talented lawyer. He had fallen for Yanhee the moment he first met her. Upon learning Yanhee was distressed over losing custody of her son, Lee Ming approached her, offering to serve as her defense attorney. Initially, Yanhee hesitated to engage with a man she barely knew. Only after a friend revealed Lee Ming's profession as a lawyer did Yanhee proactively seek him out for assistance. She then recounted the entire feud between herself and Chae-young to Lee Ming. Upon hearing her story, Lee Ming immediately agreed to help her regain custody of the child. Meanwhile, no matter how much Chae-young tried to please Jinwoo, she couldn't win his affection. Watching Jinwoo cry and cling to her every day, Chae-young finally snapped, dragging him upstairs to discipline him. Fortunately, Haewoo intervened just in time to expedite regaining custody of her son. Yanhee directly approached Haewoo, urging him to file the divorce papers with the court. This would enable her to formally contest custody in court. Soon, the first court hearing arrived. Lee Ming, Yanhee's lawyer, publicly exposed Haewoo's infidelity during their marriage. But Haewoo's lawyer argued that his client had remained faithful throughout the marriage, and that the father was better suited to raise the child. As it was the first hearing, the judge did not issue an immediate ruling. Yanhee could only await the second hearing. Ki-jae believed Yanhee's efforts were futile, convinced custody would ultimately be awarded to Haewoo. Chae-young also felt certain of winning custody. Yet just as her jaw peaked, a major problem approached. That day, a limping man walked toward Chae-young. Chae-young instantly recognized him as her ex-boyfriend, Sang-do. Sang-do knew all of Chae-young's hidden past secrets. To seize custody of Jinwoo, Chae-young had resorted to violent threats against him. Consequently, during the custody battle, Jinwoo dared not choose his mother. Chae-young issued a warning glance at him from outside the door. Terrified, Jingwoo lied that he didn't want to live with his mother. Though both lawyers presented ample evidence, the judge prioritized the child's choice and ultimately awarded custody to Haewoo. He was granted visitation rights twice a month. All rulings would take effect only after the third court hearing. Ki-jae gloated upon learning his son would gain custody of his grandson. Because of this, she surprisingly agreed to Chae-young and Haewoo's marriage. Meanwhile, He waited anxiously for half a month until the day she could finally visit her son. Yet on that day, Haewoo was late bringing the child. Only after calling did she learn Chae-young was deliberately preventing her from seeing her son. Ultimately, with Lee Ming's help, Chae-young had no choice but to personally deliver the child into Yanhee's arms. Jingwoo completely relaxed without Chae-young's supervision. Yanhee happily spent the entire day playing with her child. But that night, she discovered her son was sleepwalking. Yanhee didn't think much of it. It wasn't until she personally took Jinwoo home that the nanny rushed out to reveal a secret. Chae-young had frequently beaten and abused Jinwoo. Learning of her son's ordeal, Yanhee was terrified. She begged the nanny to testify in court on her behalf. Only then would she have a chance to regain custody of her child. But the nanny feared losing her well-paying job and dared not do so. Upon learning of this, Lee Ming immediately contacted the nanny to offer her a better job. All she needed to do was testify for Yanhee in court the next day. The lawyer's promise eliminated the nanny's lingering worries. That very day, she proactively approached Yanhee, willing to serve as her witness. Yet at the critical moment of the third court hearing, Yanhee could not reach the nanny at all. Seeing this, Chae-young gloated triumphantly. She advised Yanhee not to waste time waiting for the nanny, because she had already locked her away. Ultimately, since Yanhee's witness never appeared, Lee Ming applied for a postponement of the trial. That day, Sang-doo sought out Chae-young again. They had shared a brief romance 13 years prior. Back then, Chae-young had even carried Sang-doo's child. But, unable to endure their impoverished life, she took all of Sang-doo's savings while pregnant. Sang-doo witnessed her actions. He tried to persuade Chae-young to stay, but Chae-young refused to stay no matter what. In the struggle, Sang-doo accidentally fell and knocked over a hot water pot. Boiling water poured directly onto Sang-doo's legs. From that day on, Sang-doo was left disabled. Chae-young fled and vanished completely. It wasn't until 13 years later that Sang-doo finally tracked her down. Sang-doo demanded she reveal the child's whereabouts. Chae-young lied, claiming the child had died long ago, but Sang-doo refused to believe her. He insisted she find him a job, fearing Sang-doo would expose her past to Haewoo. Chae-young reluctantly arranged for Sang-doo to work as a security guard at her company. From then on, Sang-doo frequently harassed her at the office. He warned Chae-young to reveal his child's whereabouts. Chae-young couldn't endure Sang-doo's constant threats. That very night, she hired a group of men to beat Sang-doo up. Sang-doo knew Chae-young had sent the thugs. He resolved to exact brutal revenge on Chae-young. Soon, the final verdict arrived. The lawyer presented numerous pieces of evidence against Chae-young. At this moment, the nanny also arrived in court. She corroborated the fact that Haewoo had committed adultery during their marriage. The child had also developed psychological issues due to Chae-young's beatings. Out of concern for the child's well-being, the judge awarded custody of Jinwoo to Yanhee. Unwilling to accept this outcome, Chae-young left the courtroom early, intending to secretly hide her son. After securing custody, Yanhee rushed excitedly to her son's room. But to her shock, Jinwoo was nowhere to be found. It turned out Chae-young had taken Jinwoo to her parents' home. She planned to secretly take the child to the United States the next day. Seeing Jinwoo constantly crying for his mother, Chuji couldn't bear it. She proactively contacted Yanhee. Yanhee rushed over and slapped Chae-young across the face. She even snatched her son from Chae-young's arms and had her lawyer take him away. After all, the judge had awarded custody to her, yet Chae-young remained convinced she was the child's biological mother. Yanhee believed Chae-young didn't truly love the child. All her actions were merely revenge against her. Jinwoo was overjoyed to learn he could stay with his mother forever. TJ, unable to accept her grandson's departure, berated Chae-young harshly. Just as Chae-young was grieving the loss of her son, another trouble came her way, because Chae-young had previously sent people to beat up Sang-doo. Sang-doo, seeking retribution, directly contacts Haewoo. The two meet shortly after. Sang-doo bluntly reveals his relationship with Chae-young. Haewoo, enraged, orders him to leave. Before departing, Sang-doo informs Haewoo that Chae-young's brother is Yanhee's ex-boyfriend, and that Chae-young was only with him to get back at Yanhee. Haewoo initially dismissed Sang-doo's claims as nonsense, until Sang-doo produced the breakup letter Chae-young had given him years ago. Only then did Haewoo truly lose his composure. After reading the letter, he realized Sang-doo hadn't lied. He recalled the first time Chae-young invited him to the pool, then deliberately lured him to a hotel. Her goal was to bait him into her trap. Soon after, she suddenly became his wife's friend. event. Only then did Haewoo realize Chae-young was destroying his family. After he fell for her scheme, she brought his wife to the hotel. From that moment, his marriage was completely over. Haewoo, now fully aware of everything, was filled with regret. That same day, Haewoo returned home and exposed Chae-young's true colors. At first, Chae-young tried to make excuses, but when Haewoo mentioned Sang-doo's name, Chae-young knew she couldn't hide it anymore. Enraged, Haewoo demanded Chae-young leave. With nowhere else to go, Chae-young returned to her parents' home. That very day, she received another piece of news. Her ex-boyfriend Mark in the US had been arrested and sent to prison. It was because she and Mark had conspired to defraud Yanhee's father, bringing him down. If Mark exposed her past, she would have no chance of winning custody of her son. Unable to visit Mark in prison herself, Chae-young immediately thought of someone suitable to deliver her message. To seal his lips, that same day, she arranged to meet Sang-doo and revealed their child was not dead, but had been secretly given away by her. Though the child was currently outside Korea, she assured him she could easily retrieve her using her connections. The condition was that Sang-doo must go to prison to deliver her message. Thus, Sang-doo went to prison, as agreed to meet Mark, and conveyed Chae-young's words. Mark understood Chae-young's meaning and agreed not to expose her. Just as Sang-doo was about to leave, Mark grew curious about his relationship with Chae-young. He then learned from Sang-doo that they were both Chae-young's ex-boyfriends. Sang-doo later relayed Mark's message to Chae-young. He deliberately asked about Chae-young and Mark's relationship. Chae-young lied, claiming they were just ordinary friends. After Chae-young left, Sang-doo produced a recording. He had recorded everything Chae-young had said. Meanwhile, unable to cope with his family's breakdown, Haewoo drowned his sorrows in alcohol daily. Lee Ming, seeing this, tried to comfort him, but Haewoo flew into a drunken rage. Lee Ming had no choice but to take Haewoo to Yanhee's house to rest. Jinwoo was overjoyed to see his father after so many days apart. He even answered a call from his grandmother. Ki-jae was surprised to learn her son was at Yanhee's house. At that moment, she desperately hoped the two would reconcile quickly. Soon, Chae-young learned from Yanhee's sister that Haewoo had stayed overnight at Yanhee's house. Fearing Haewoo might actively pursue reconciliation with Yanhee, Chae-young sought out her mother-in-law that very night and knelt to apologize. But Ki-jae offered Chae-young no welcome. That day, Chae-young saw Yanhee bringing her son to meet Haewoo. She discovered the two were actually planning to remarry. Unwilling to accept this, Chae-young filed a lawsuit against Yanhee and Haewoo the very next day. She exposed her surrogacy arrangement to reporters. She even falsely claimed she had been abused. Soon, this interview made the news. Soon after, Yanhee received a court summons. She immediately confronted Chae-young. She accused Chae-young of having no right to fight her for the child. But Chae-young countered that Yanhee was unfit to be a mother. The two women locked in a fierce battle over custody. Meanwhile, Sang-doo was furious upon learning Chae-young intended to reclaim the surrogate-born child. He knew Chae-young had no real desire to retrieve their child. The next day, Sang-doo confronted Yanhee, revealing Chae-young's past, and handed her an audio recording. Its contents proved Chae-young and Mark were friends. Yanhee, desperate to catch the fraudster framing her father, takes the recording to visit Mark in prison that very day. Mark, however, remains completely unmoved. Choo-ji cannot understand why her daughter insists on fighting for custody of the child, especially since she was merely a surrogate mother. With no other choice, Chae-young reveals the truth. Jinwoo is her biological son. Choo-ji was utterly shocked upon hearing this. Soon after, Chae-young arrived at court to battle Yanhee for custody of the child. In court, Chae-young falsely claimed she had acted as Yanhee's surrogate out of compassion. She asserted she had never demanded any payment during this period, because Chae-young had torn up the contract between her and her mother-in-law some time ago. Now, no one could prove Haewoo had paid Chae-young the 2 billion won fee. Ultimately, Yanhee, unable to produce evidence, could only wait for the next court session. Seeing the woman full of lies, Ki-jae angrily assaulted Chae-young in front of reporters. However, her actions quickly made the news. Most people began supporting Chae-young. To counter Chae-young, Yanhee proactively gave an interview, revealing the feud between them. Yanhee's interview instantly shifted public opinion. Chae-young was furious upon seeing it. She learned Yanhee was searching for evidence of the 200 million won she had accepted years ago. To prevent Yanhee from obtaining the last remaining contract in her possession, Chae-young immediately shredded the evidence and tossed it into the trash. But what Chae-young didn't expect was that Sang-doo had been watching her all along. The contract she threw away was retrieved by Sang-doo. Sang-doo promptly delivered the shredded contract to Yanhee. Yanhee urgently sought a lawyer to reconstruct the document. Soon, the two successfully pieced together this crucial evidence. Shortly after, the case entered its second trial. Lee Ming directly presented the reconstructed contract, proving Chae-young had accepted payment to act as Yanhee's surrogate. He then produced evidence of Chae-young's child abuse. Faced with her lies being exposed, Chae-young blurted out the secret in front of the judge. Jinwoo was her biological son. Yan-hee couldn't believe her ears. She never imagined Chae-young would stoop so low for revenge. TJ, upon hearing this, fainted on the spot from the shock. Just then, Yan-hee received even more terrifying news. She suddenly discovered she had a 13-year-old daughter. She refused to believe Chae-young's words. How could the child declared dead by doctors all those years ago still be alive? Chae-young explained that the child Yan-hee had given birth to was being raised as her own daughter by her mother. Given the extreme complexity of the case, the judge could only adjourn proceedings, ordering the parties to submit paternity test results before continuing. Yan-hee feared Chae-young would take her son away. She asked her father if the child she had with Don-han was still alive. Dae-cheo firmly insisted his daughter was truly dead. Yan-hee dared not trust her father's words anymore. She resolved to uncover the truth herself. The next day, Yan-hee found Sola, who had been raised by Chae-young's family. She even planned to take her for a paternity test, but Chae-young's mother intervened just in time. Tae-woo erupted in rage upon learning Chae-young had secretly swapped Yan-hee's eggs. He even threatened to kill Chae-young. As Chae-young gasped for breath under his chokehold, security guards rushed in to restrain Hae-woo. Hae-woo was ultimately taken to the police station by security for attempted murder. TJ had no choice but to apologize to Chae-young to save her son. Seeing the elderly woman's attitude, Chae-young finally agreed to forgive Hae-woo. To reveal the child's true identity sooner, Chae-young took Jinwoo with Yan-hee for a paternity test the very next day. Meanwhile, upon learning his ex-girlfriend had given birth to a daughter, Sang-doo began suspecting Sola might very well be his child. To confirm his hunch, Sang-doo confronted Chuji, demanding she reveal the truth, but Chuji refused to admit anything. Seeing this, Sang-doo resolved to find answers himself. That same day, he went to the vicinity of Sola's school, and even followed her all the way. Seizing an opportunity, he tried to speak with Sola, but the two girls, fearing he was a bad guy, ran away in fright. Seeing this, Sang-doo resorted to using a drink Sola left behind to conduct a paternity test. Chae-young, anxious because she hadn't received the paternity report yet, called the doctor ahead of time to find out the results, but due to the judge's intervention, the results had to be kept confidential for the time being. To ensure her victory the next day, Chae-young sought out the doctor who had facilitated the egg swap years ago. Kan-ho appeared flustered upon seeing her. Chae-young pleaded for him to testify on her behalf in court. Kan-ho refused outright. Chae-young countered that if he agreed to testify, she could offer him substantial compensation. Only then did Kan-ho reluctantly agree. The next day, Kan-ho appeared in court as promised. Just as Chae-young believed she was about to reclaim her biological son, Kan-ho stated he had never swapped the eggs. Chae-young couldn't believe what she heard. Then the judge presented the paternity test proving the doctor was telling the truth. Jinwoo's biological mother was Yan-hee. It turned out Kan-ho, fearing it would ruin his career, and never helped Chae-young swap the eggs. Upon learning the truth, Chae-young completely broke down, overwhelmed by emotion. She even fainted. Now that Yan-hee had confirmation her son was biologically hers, she could finally pick him up from kindergarten with peace of mind. After fainting in court, Chae-young was taken to the hospital by her mother. When she suddenly woke up, she recalled what had just happened. The thought of losing to Yan-hee, her emotions surged even more violently. Chae-young then stormed to Yan-hee's doorstep and attempted to snatch Jinwoo away. Fortunately, Junhee rushed over at the critical moment and carried Jinwoo to safety. Yan-hee berated Chae-young, calling her actions despicable. Yet Chae-young believed Yan-hee was the truly heartless one for abandoning her own biological daughter. Hearing this, Yan-hee began doubting whether Sola was truly her daughter. The next day, she sought out Chae-young's mother, demanding she reveal the truth. Yet Chuji insisted they had no connection whatsoever. If Yan-hee didn't believe her, she could get a paternity test. Li Ming, determined to uncover whether Sola was Yan-hee's child, seized an opportunity to obtain a strand of Sola's hair. Meanwhile, Sang-doo also arranged a paternity test for Sola. Upon seeing the results, he finally realized Sola was his biological daughter. Sang-doo confronted Chae-young, demanding to know why she had deceived him. After reading the report, Chae-young was stunned. Clearly, she too had been unaware of the truth. All these years, Chae-young had believed Sola was Yan-hee's daughter, which was why she had never once treated Sola kindly. To confirm whether the paternity test results were mistaken, Chae-young relentlessly pressed her mother for the truth. Faced with this, Chuji had no choice but to admit Sola was indeed her daughter. Just as Chae-young, unable to accept this reality, prepared to flee, their conversation was overheard by Sola, who had just returned from school. Shattered by the revelation, Sola ran out in despair. Chae-young, unable to bear the fact that Sola was her daughter, even contemplated ending her life to escape this outcome. Yet, fueled by lingering hatred hatred. She resolved not to die so easily. Little did she know, even greater trouble was brewing. Hae-woo, seeking revenge against Chae-young, used his American connections to investigate her. He soon uncovered that Chae-young and Mark had been lovers abroad, and that Mark was the largest shareholder in Chae-young's company. Armed with this information, Hae-woo handed it all over to Yan-hee, hoping she could use it to reclaim her father's company. The next day, Yan-hee took the documents to the company to expose Chae-young's true nature. Chae-young had already been secretly embezzling company funds and transferring them overseas. Meanwhile, Chae-young wasn't thinking about how to make amends for her wrongdoing toward Sola. Instead, she saw her as a tool to use to marry into wealth once more. Thus, Chae-young deceived Sola's mother into believing Hae-woo was Sola's biological father. Her motive was to make Sola a child of wealth, and thereby legitimize her own relationship with Hae-woo. Meanwhile, with Hae-woo and his classmates' help, Yan-hee finally uncovered Chae-young's dirty deeds. Chae-young was furious upon discovering her secrets exposed. She believed Yan-hee was deliberately smearing her reputation. But no matter how fiercely Chae-young defended herself, no one would believe her anymore. Thus, Chae-young was removed from her position as CEO by the shareholders. With Chae-young ousted, Yan-hee's father seized control of the company. Sola was devastated upon learning Chae-young was her mother. Seeing her distress, Chuji felt deeply sorry for her. She went straight to Hae-woo and revealed Sola was his daughter. Hae-woo dismissed Chuji's claim as nonsense. He confronted Chae-young, demanding to know if his mother's words were true. Chae-young lied, claiming Sola was indeed his daughter, suggesting Hae-woo could arrange a paternity test if he doubted her. Faced with Chae-young's resolute gaze, Hae-woo began to waver. That same night, Sang-doo sought out Chae-young again. He declared he wouldn't reclaim his daughter, arguing his current circumstances couldn't provide her with a happy life. He hoped Sola would remain with Chae-young. Chae-young pretended to comfort Sang-doo, promising to care for Sola, but in reality, she secretly obtained Sang-doo's hair sample. She was plotting an even bigger scheme, believing Sola was his daughter. Hae-woo summoned Chae-young to his home, demanding she explain everything to her mother face-to-face. Ki-jae suspected this was all part of Chae-young's scheme. To everyone's surprise, Chae-young solemnly declared she was willing to undergo a paternity test. That same day, she took Sang-doo's hair to prepare for the test with her daughter. She then contacted Hae-woo to arrange for his hair sample. Dizzy with work, Hae-woo had his assistant deliver it. But as the assistant rushed to the hospital, Chae-young intercepted him in the garage. She bribed the assistant to obtain Hae-woo's hair. Unexpectedly, Sang-doo, who was preparing to leave, witnessed the entire incident. Sang-doo had recently told Yan-hee he was Sola's biological father, yet Yan-hee suddenly heard that Hae-woo had become Sola's father. Sang-doo was utterly shocked upon hearing this. He immediately rushed out and blocked Chae-young's car. He confronted her, demanding to know why she was doing this. Chae-young explained she only wanted Sola to have a wealthy father for a better life. Ultimately, Sang-doo was persuaded by Chae-young's reasoning. Meanwhile, Hae-woo finally obtained the paternity test results. Sure enough, it confirmed he and Sola shared a biological father-daughter relationship. Hae-woo remained utterly unable to accept this reality. Ki-jae was deeply shocked upon learning the news. That same day, she tracked down Chae-young and demanded she bring Sola over. Having achieved her goal, Chae-young was ecstatic. That night, she returned to pack Sola's belongings. Ki-jae was overjoyed to see her granddaughter. After Hae-woo retrieved his daughter, he ordered Chae-young to get out. He refused to live under the same roof as a woman like her. Just then, Chae-young suddenly received a call from Sang-doo. Panicked, she rushed to the door to investigate. It turned out Sang-doo had been monitoring Chae-young all along. Only now did he realize Chae-young had used Sola to move into the mansion. Furious, he resolved to expose all of Chae-young's secrets. To prevent Sang-doo from ruining her plans, Chae-young brutally attacked him with a rock. She then took his phone and wallet, staging a fake robbery scene. Unbeknownst to her, she left the crucial voice recorder behind. To marry into the wealthy family, Chae-young forced her daughter to win Hae-woo's favor. But Sola, having no emotional connection with Hae-woo, refuses to obey her mother's orders. As she storms off in anger, she's struck by an oncoming car and thrown to the ground. Chae-young, witnessing this, is instantly overcome with panic. Sola, severely bleeding from the accident, is rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment. Seeing this, Chae-young is consumed by guilt. Chuji, learning of Sola's accident, frantically rushes over. She berated Chae-young for failing to look after Sola properly. Chae-young explained she had merely scolded her daughter few times. The accident happened while Sola was throwing a tantrum. Her words were overheard by Hae-woo, who had just arrived. He confronted Chae-young, demanding why she had done this. Meanwhile, the grandmother vented her anger at Chae-young. Just then, a nurse rushed out, announcing the patient needed a blood transfusion. Hae-woo asked what Sola's blood type was. Upon learning her daughter's blood type, Hae-woo was stunned. Sola's blood type didn't match either of theirs. Realizing what had happened, Hae-woo understood he'd been deceived by Chae-young once again. He warned Chae-young never to show her face to him again. As the two argued fiercely, Chuji overheard their conversation. She couldn't believe her daughter had deceived everyone once more. Chae-young, too, was consumed by guilt over her actions. Currently, the hospital had no matching blood type for Sola. The nurse informed her a donor was already on the way. Just as she began to relax, Yan-hee arrived with a lawyer. It turned out Sang-doo wasn't dead. He had come specifically to donate blood for his daughter. Yan-hee reminded Chae-young that her actions constituted attempted murder, yet Chae-young refused to admit her guilt. Ultimately, with Sang-doo's help, Sola was saved. That night, Sang-doo confronted Chae-young, holding the recording. He declared he would send her to prison. Only then did fear grip Chae-young. She begged Sang-doo for forgiveness, but Sang-doo remained resolute he would send her to jail. Meanwhile, Sola finally returned home after recovering. Learning Haewoo wasn't her biological father, she felt relieved instead. She declared she would stay with her grandmother forever. Seeing this, Chuji agreed to Sola's request. Because Sang-doo recorded evidence of Chae-young's attempted murder, police soon arrived to arrest her, but Chae-young wasn't at home at the time. Though Sola despised her mother, she didn't want her to go to prison. She urgently contacted Chae-young, urging her to hide immediately. Chae-young knew her daughter was concerned for her. She told her daughter to take good care of her grandmother from now on. With that, she hurriedly hung up the phone. Sola sensed her mother might be heading out to take her own life. She urgently called Yan-hee for help. Using Chae-young's phone location, Yan-hee found her car, but Chae-young wasn't inside. Seeing the flowers laid on the ground, Yan-hee remembered this was the spot where Dong-han died in a car accident years ago. She guessed where Chae-young had gone. At that moment, Chae-young, her heart dead inside, walked toward the sea. Just then, Yan-hee rushed over and grabbed her. She believed Chae-young should face legal consequences for her wrongdoing. As the two struggled in the water, the police arrived on the scene. Ultimately, Chae-young was sentenced to 1 year in prison for attempted murder and inciting embezzlement. During that year, she refused all visits. Meanwhile, Haewoo drowned his sorrows in alcohol daily after losing his wife and child. Ki-jae watched helplessly. She could only plead with Yan-hee to save Haewoo, so Yan-hee brought her son back home. Seeing Haewoo's despondent state, she scolded him harshly. Finally, under Yan-hee's bitter rebuke, Haewoo agreed to pull himself together. A year later, Haewoo had regained his former self. Meanwhile, he faced his mother's relentless pressure to marry every day. But Haewoo, still in love with Yan-hee, kept refusing. During this year, Yan-hee and her father expanded their family business significantly. At the same time, she and Lee Ming became a couple. One day, when Yan-hee came to visit Dong-han, she happened to run into Chae-young, who had just been released from prison. Just as Chae-young was about to apologize to Yan-hee, Jin-woo came running over. Though terrified of the woman before him, encouraged by Yan-hee, he greeted Chae-young. Chae-young couldn't help but embrace Jin-woo. She had learned to let go and stop clinging to her son. All that mattered now was that he lived a happy life.